the other side of this that I bet very few of you ever knew about.
Yeah. Just as
And now here's the rest of the story.
well, as you had just talked about, the United States was, obviously in 1943 deeply involved in World War II. Citizens were giving up everything from cigarettes to gasoline to, so even women were giving up their silk stockings to make parachutes. But in another country in Europe, there was a completely different set of circumstances. And this country is Belgium. Belgium was invaded in 1940 by the Germans, and in the year 1944, it was run by a puppet government, um, and the Germans leveled all sorts of different taxes on the Belgians, basically demanding that the Belgian people pay for the German war effort. Or at least part of the German war effort. And Belgium was forced to pay nearly 2/3 of its national income for these charges, a figure equaling about 5.7 billion Reichsmarks, which is a
We're going to
lot.
protect you. We're going to protect you. Okay. This kind of sounds like the old mafia, neighborhood protection agent. We're gonna make sure your shop doesn't get broken into.
Exactly.
We're gonna make sure that you don't get invaded.
Yep. Yeah. Well, but they had already been invaded, and that was the thing.
Yeah.
Yep. And they called these taxes external occupation costs. That was what the Germans called them. Um, and just like in any other country really involved in the war effort, the food, fuel, clothing, they were strictly rationed by the Germans. Um, but the this caused a significant black market actually in Europe for things like food, but also clothing. Um, and because of this occupation, the Belgian people really decided that um, not all of them, but some of them definitely needed to go underground and rise up against the Germans. There was an underground newspaper called La Libre Belgique, which achieved a circulation of 30,000 copies during World War II. Which, at the time, if you were found to be part of the resistance, you were usually jailed or executed pretty quickly. Um, Now, as the war went on, Belgium was also, unfortunately, a casualty of the German occupation. Allied bombers from both the British RAF and the United States Army Air Force um, did, in fact, bomb targets in Belgium. In one raid on the Erla Motor Works in the Belgian town of Mortsel, just two bombs dropped by the B-17s of the 8th Air Force hit their target. The remaining 24 tons of bombs fell on a civilian area of the town, which killed 936 Belgians and injured around 1,600 in just 8 minutes.
Wow.
Yep. Um, Also, uh, Belgians themselves were used in German labor programs. Around 375,000 Belgians served in labor programs within Germany. Basically, these people were taken from their homes, moved to Germany to either work in factories or in agriculture to support the German war effort. Um, and then there was also the conscription of Belgians to fight in the German army. Um, Now, 180,000 Belgians signed up for conscription, but most of those people were actually sent to work in forced labor camps. So basically, these guys signed up to serve in the army, but instead of serving in the army, they were sent to labor camps and factories to work.
Like
Um,
little rocks out of big rocks.
Pretty much. um, Now, the liberation of Belgium came in September of 1944. Now, during this liberation slash Allied occupation, the Belgians found a need for new coinage. Basically, they had been using these coins that the Germans were minting, that they hated, obviously, because they were you know, they were coins of an occupation.
Right. They were symbolic of their oppressors.
So one of the first things that the restored Belgian government wanted to do was to issue coinage. So they started looking around to some of the other allies, and they came across, or they ended up talking with the United States, and they came across a stockpile of planchets that we weren't going to use anymore because our use of them was done, and there were about 25 million leftover steel planchets.
Just 25 million of these things laying around, just
And we
not
didn't want
doing
to use
anything.
them. We didn't. We weren't using them in 1944. Obviously, we were done striking them in steel. The Lincoln cents in steel. So the Philadelphia Mint actually struck Belgian 2 franc coins in 1944 on the exact same planchet as the 1943 steel Lincoln cent. And this is where all of this ties back together. These two coins from two different places, um, in two different sections of the world that were both being affected by the same war.
Both hated the same people.
Yep. Both fighting against the same people. Just the Americans tended to have it a little bit better, I think, because they weren't, they were not
Occupied.
under occupation, and their men weren't being forced to work in factories or fight in the German army, and their economy wasn't being ransacked by the Germans.
But I mean, think about what a cool set you could make of these. You
Oh
put the
yeah,
three steel cents together and you get yourself a nice Belgian 2 franc coin
yeah.
from 1944. See if you can get yourself a nice transitional 44 steel cent error.
Good luck with that.
Yeah, well, if you're going to dream, you might as well dream big. But how common are these coins, the 44 2 francs?
They're not that uncommon, actually. I see them relatively often, but it wasn't just until maybe 3 or 4 years ago that I actually realized, hey, wait a minute, these are struck on the same planchets as 43 steel pennies. And it was just by happenstance that I even discovered that. So,
It's amazing to me that we had 25 million of them just kind of laying
well,
around.
that's the thing. We didn't want them. We were done. It was 44. We were done making them. We had copper again.
Yeah, we were actually starting to melt down shell casings.
Yep, yep. So we had our copper back. People were happy. They didn't really like the silver pennies, as they called them. So they had the surplus of planchets, and it just happened to work out that one of our allies needed them. So
People get very funny about their money. They get very attached to their money,
yes. Well,
and they
that's
do not like you messing with it.
exactly right.
Well, waking up, I'm so damn cold.
Now, just as a side note,
Yeah.
have you noticed who has come into the Google Hangout?
No, no. Who?
Well, Chris is there,
Uh-huh.
and Ernesto's there,
Yeah.
like they always are.
Uh-huh.
But if you look, there is there is a My Little Pony shirt that says "Friendship really is magic," and you know who that is?
No.
That's Ilya.
We're gonna have to mess with him here in a little bit
Yeah.
and hear that voice.
Oh, dude, I've got to hear him on. So
Yeah.
don't go anywhere. We're gonna get back to you, young man.
Old man. We don't really know how.
I with pipes like that, he's got to be young,
I don't know.
forever young. I'm proud and I am amazed to say that if you go to coinshowradio.com and you click on to the What Walked In blog,
Yep.
you can go right there right now. You can look at the What Walked In blog and you can see a picture of the coolest thing that walked into Matt's shop this voice.
Now, it wasn't a shot piece. This was a show piece, but it walked up to my table at a show, so close enough. Close enough for government work.
This is a really cool piece though,
Yep. Yep.
because I'm assuming that this is struck on a cent planchet.
No. No, this thing's as big as a $20 gold piece.
Really?
Yeah. So what it is it's a so-called dollar. It has the designation of HK 876. So that doesn't mean much unless you're a so-called dollar expert. But what it is a metal that was struck at the Denver Mint for the opening of the Denver Mint in 1905. The cool thing about this, these medals were the first pieces ever struck at the Denver Mint. So this piece here could be the very first thing ever made at the Denver Mint.
And this is in PCGS MS65 red brown.
Second finest known, by the way.
Really?
There is a 65 red.
It is amazing. I would, now this is just me guessing. I would guess that either they did not prepare the planches, or this is definitely not one of the first pieces to come off the dies, because of the strike is really nice. The denticles going around it remind me of the Indian head dollar, or the Indian head cent.
Yeah, very similar.
But the depth of the rest of the coin doesn't seem to be very.
There's nothing. It's just the coin is very interesting because on one side it says Denver 1905, and on the other side it's blank.
It's
There's
completely
nothing there.
blank.
So
Your sign here.
yes, it's not much to look at as far as a coin goes, but as a very neat historical piece.
Yeah, this is an artifact.
It does have a lot going for it because,
Yes.
especially for us coin nerds, the Denver Mint, this is a pretty big deal. That they opened this mint in 1905, and they struck these medals basically to give away at the opening ceremony.
Now, the first coins, and I mean coins that were struck at Denver, appeared in 1906, right?
Uh-huh.
So we're talking like barber quarters and.
They struck
Yeah.
some gold, I believe.
Okay.
Yeah, in the Barber
Because-
series.
Because I know they didn't strike any copper or minor coins there until 1909.
Yeah.
Or actually, no, till 1910.
10D, yeah.
Yeah.
10D Lincoln.
So the Denver Mint was it took them a little bit to kind of get their feet underneath them and get rolling.
Well, and
But
that
once they did,
that may also explain the lack of said quality on this particular piece because this was struck on the mint, the brand new, maybe not calibrated U.S. Mint equipment.
Mm.
So,
yeah, you probably have something on that.
I mean, that's just a theory, but
Well, I'm looking at the planchet itself, and it looks like it doesn't look rusty, but it looks discolored.
yeah, and that may be just a factor of time. I mean,
That could be preservation. You're right,
so it's a very cool piece, though.
but it is a very cool piece.
And they're really actually pretty darn rare. They estimate that there's approximately 75 of these known.
And one of them just happened to be in Indianapolis.
Yep.
Just happened to stroll in.
Yep.
I like the designation on the PCGS lab, SC $1. That's a so-called dollar.
Yep.
So, okay, was this a customer that you've ever seen before?
Nope. Just somebody walking around a coin show that we were at here. We were at the Indiana State Coin Show here in Indianapolis about, let's see, what was that, 2 weeks ago now?
Was the coin
week and a
already
half.
certified?
Yep, already certified. Just whipped it out, and I did the research and figured out what it was.
Wow. And so, what would the retail price of something like this be?
Well, that was actually really hard to determine. There is unfortunately not too awful many of these in this kind of state of preservation. The 65 red has never sold. And a 63 red brown is listed for sale at $3,000.
Now, you said the 65 reds never sold, which
Yes.
means that it belonged to a family that.
I have no idea. I could just not find any record of that particular coin ever selling.
Wow. So it's never been at least at auction.
Never been at auction.
And you said the 63 is for sale, but that also says to me hasn't sold.
Yes. There is one I could buy for $3,000 in a 63 red brown holder. So,
So
I don't know. It's a good question. I'm thinking somewhere in the mid threes is probably what it's worth, but it's hard to say.
only the market will determine that. but-
Exactly. So it's kind of an esoteric kind of piece, but I thought it was